Cognitive behavioral strategies are often used in a counseling setting, but they can be used very effectively in a classroom setting, either with an individual student or with a group of students. And I'm going to walk you through how I would typically do this when I'm sitting with a student or I'm working with a group. So I have a triangle drawn on the board, and normally what I would do is I'd place in the middle just the problem, whatever the issue is that the child is presenting with. Just take just another whiteboard marker, and then I just draw a line just to kind of separate the behaviors from what I call the needs. Let's just write that properly. So the needs that are under the behavior. And so the behavior where I feel we spend a lot of time as teachers, a lot of time as parents, is only 20% of what's really happening. Underneath here, you have the 80% that's kind of driving the behaviors that you're seeing. And so ask yourself, what is it that's fueling that student's behavior? Encourage the student to pause, to reflect on emotions, to attune to the needs beneath that student's behavior, which is what we talked about earlier, and then very important to set limits to that particular behavior. Oftentimes, if we're not careful, we rush into setting limits, but that is, unless that student's safety is at risk, that is probably one of the last things you want to do. So let's talk a little bit about thoughts and what are some ways in which we can help students kind of work through some of the thoughts that you're seeing. I consider, and a lot of professionals, other counselors consider, are the factors that actually drive these behaviors. Remember, kids are often, what you're often seeing with them is just a lot of red thoughts. What I mean by that is just negative thoughts that they have that are, that's kind of driving the behaviors that you're seeing. So a strategy or a few strategies that you can use. One, recognize that your student is in that negative cycle. It's very simple. Take some time, as I said before, pause, just recognize that this is where your student is at. When you're supporting the student, very, very important that you assume a non-judgmental stance toward that particular student as well. So rather than being quick to assume what's going on, to assume that you know exactly what's going on, take a step back, pause for a little bit, and maybe even ask yourself, what do I think is going on? Or ask the student what's going on for them. Oftentimes students, if they have a safe and they feel safe enough with you, if they have a great relationship, they feel safe with you, they will take the time to let you know what's happening for them. A method that I personally love to use because it really helps the student to understand what's happening is what we call the Socratic method. So it's just a number of questions that you can use to clarify the process for that student. So questions like, what is another way to look at this? Or what would be an example of that particular thing that you are the most worried about? I often, and I will say to students as well, challenge the negative mindset or the negative thoughts that you have. And for every negative thought that a student have, I often say to them, I want for you to give me 2 positive thoughts. And you'd be surprised how well students do with that. They're great at coming up with ideas and thoughts and positive ways of thinking about the same problem. And oftentimes I see a significant shift in behavior when students are able to generate, rather than me or getting the parent or the teacher to generate ideas or thoughts for them, I get them to generate it themselves, and it's just absolutely incredible to kind of see what happens. So challenge the negative thinking. One of the things that I love to do is just point out the facts, or get the students to just kind of look at the facts as they are. And that also is a really great tool for changing or affecting behaviors and addressing or even just changing some of the negative feelings that are associated with those behaviors. So feelings. So thoughts often lead to how the student is feeling. And a lot of times those feelings that the students have, whether it's a feeling of shame, a feeling of ambivalence, a feeling of worry, anxiety, a feeling of embarrassment, those feelings are often at the core of the behavior that you see. A lot of students don't recognize that it's really important for them or they find it really difficult to kind of separate the feelings from how they behave. And so they feel it and then they think, I just have to do it because it's what I feel. And the feeling now becomes one of the primary driving forces behind that particular behavior. So what I say to teachers, what I say to parents, and what I would encourage you to do in the classroom is offer a label, because sometimes it's really difficult for students to label that emotion. So offer a label for that student. So what I mean by that is you say something simple as, seems like you're feeling angry about X or Y, or you seem to be really upset right now. A lot of teachers worry that they will plant a feeling or plant an emotion, and what I will say to you about that is, and this is from emotion-focused family therapy, if it's not a feeling, if it's not a thing, it will not stick. Next thing I will suggest that you do is give the student the space to kind of reframe the emotion if necessary. So you offer a feeling or an emotion and the students say, no, this is not what it is. And what they would typically do is say, no, I don't feel this, I feel this instead. I don't feel angry, I'm just feeling embarrassed. Do not dismiss that student's feeling. Really important that you, when a student gives you and offer you an emotion, really important that you just allow that emotion to be, right? And not dismiss it. And then the final strategy is, and there are other strategies that we could talk about, but for the purposes of this video, the final strategy is validation. And validation just simply means, you know what? I don't blame you, Sarah, for feeling that way, because if I was in your position, I would probably feel the very same way. So just remember, what you're seeing in terms of behaviors, only 20%. The factors that are driving the behaviors are the thoughts, the negative thoughts about that particular thing, whatever that issue is that's in the middle, or the feelings that kind of spring oftentimes from those thoughts. So feelings of shame and anxiety and embarrassment, and worry or anger. So really important to pay attention to those. So thank you for taking the time just to kind of learn about this, and I'm hoping that it will be that you can effectively go out and try it. Don't be afraid to try this in your classroom. These are great strategies and incredibly powerful to kind of help students shift out of negative behavioral cycles.